I buried my husband 6 months ago. Yesterday I saw him buying groceries. But let me start at the beginning before everything I knew turned into a lie. My name is Grace Morrison. I'm 62 years old, and for the last 6 months I've been teaching myself how to be a widow. It's harder than you'd think learning to set the table for one to stop reaching for his coffee mug in the morning to sleep in the center of the bed, instead of clinging to my side like I'm still making room for someone. The morning it happened, the morning everything changed, started like all the others since Jack died. I woke at 6:15 exactly 3 minutes before my alarm, the way I always do now. My body doesn't trust sleep anymore. It's afraid of what might happen if I let my guard down completely. I lay there in the early light listening to the house settle around me. Our house. Jack's and mine. Though I suppose it's just mine now, along with everything else. The mortgage payments, the leaking faucet in the guest bathroom, the silence that fills every room like furniture I can't move. I rolled over and looked at his pillow. I still keep it there on his side of the bed, even though my son David told me it wasn't healthy to maintain the shrine. That's what he called it, a shrine. As if love and grief could be packed away like Christmas decorations once the season passed. The pillow holds the faintest impression of Jack's head. 6 months and I can still see the slight hollow where he used to sleep, can still catch the ghost of his scent if I press my face into the fabric. Old Spice and the mint shampoo he swore helped with hair loss, though we both knew it was a losing battle. I got up slowly. My knees complained first, then my lower back, the usual chorus of aches that come with being 62 and alone. I caught my reflection in the dresser mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. When did I get so gray? When did these lines around my mouth become so deep? Like parentheses around words I've stopped saying I used to be pretty. Jack told me so all the time, even toward the end, even when I knew he was lying a little. "You're still my beautiful Grace," he'd say, touching my cheek with those rough contractor's hands. I'd roll my eyes, but secretly I believed him. Or maybe I just needed to. Downstairs I went through the morning ritual. Coffee 2 scoops instead of 4 because I still haven't adjusted the portions. Toast with butter, no jam, because jam was Jack's thing and it feels like betrayal to enjoy it without him. I sat at the kitchen table, the same chair I've sat in for 38 years, looking at the empty chair across from me. That's where Jack used to sit reading the newspaper, actual paper, not a tablet, complaining about the Trailblazers or some new city ordinance he didn't agree with. He'd talk even when I wasn't listening, a comfortable stream of observations and opinions that I thought would never stop. I thought a lot of things would never stop. The wedding photo on the mantel caught my eye. We were so young, me in my mother's altered dress, Jack in a rented tux that was slightly too big in the shoulders. 24 and 21 barely adults convinced we knew everything about love and forever. We had 38 years. Some people would say that's a lifetime. But when you're the one left behind, when you're the one still breathing while your other half is buried under 6 feet of earth, 38 years feels like it was never enough. I spent 38 years learning how to be Jack's wife. I learned that he took his coffee, black-hated onions but loved garlic, snored when he slept on his back, and always left his socks on the bedroom floor, no matter how many times I asked him not to. I learned the rhythm of his breathing, the weight of his hand on my shoulder, the exact tone his voice took when he was about to apologize. And then on a rainy Tuesday last October, a police officer knocked on my door and told me I would have to learn how to be someone else entirely. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm afraid there's been an accident." Accident. Such a clean word for something so violent. They told me Jack's truck went off Highway 26 down into the Columbia River Gorge. They told me he died instantly, a kindness, they said, as if there was any kind way to die. They told me the body was badly burned, that I shouldn't see it, that I should remember him as he was. So I did. I remembered him as he was that morning, kissing my forehead before heading out to the construction site. "Love you, Gracie," he'd said, using the nickname only he was allowed to use. "Be back for dinner." He wasn't. The funeral was 3 days later. Closed casket, of course. I stood there, one hand on the polished wood, trying to feel him inside. But all I felt was hollow wood and hollow me. David stood beside me, his hand on my elbow, holding me up like I might collapse. Maybe I would have if I'd known then what I know now. Friends came, neighbors, Jack's crew from Morrison Construction, the company he'd built from nothing. They all said the same things. He was a good man. He loved you so much. At least he didn't suffer. At least. As if that made it better. as if there was any acceptable way to lose the person you'd built your entire adult life around. I scattered the ashes, what they told me were his ashes, at Multnomah Falls, where we'd gotten engaged 40 years ago. I watched the gray powder disappear into the mist and thought, this is it. This is how love ends. In dust and water and memory. 6 months. That's how long I've been living in this strange half-life, going through motions without meaning existing, without quite living. 6 months of well-meaning friends telling me to get out more, to try grief counseling, to give it time. As if time could fix this. As if time could fill the jack-shaped hole in my life. But that morning, that ordinary Tuesday morning, 6 months and 3 days after I buried my husband, I decided to try. I decided to go to Safeway and buy groceries like a normal person, like someone who was moving forward instead of drowning in the past. I had no idea that moving forward would mean stepping directly into a nightmare. I finished my coffee, washed the cup, just the one, and grabbed my purse. The house key felt heavy in my hand. It used to be one of 2 keys on Jack's keychain. Now it's alone, just like me. I locked the door behind me, a habit Jack insisted on even in our safe Portland neighborhood, and drove to the Safeway on Northwest 23rd. It was 10:30 in the morning, early enough to avoid the lunch rush, but late enough that I wouldn't look pathetic buying eggs and bread at dawn. The parking lot was half full. I took a spot near the back. Jack always parked far away, said the walk was good for us, and grabbed a cart. The automatic doors whooshed open and cool air conditioning hit my face. Inside, everything was aggressively normal. Bright lights, Muzak playing something that might have been a Beatles song once. The smell of fresh bread from the bakery section mixing with the faint chemical scent of floor cleaner. I pushed my cart down the produce aisle, picking up apples without really seeing them. A bunch of bananas. Some lettuce that I probably wouldn't eat before it went bad. I was functioning on autopilot, the way I'd learned to do body-present mind somewhere else entirely. It wasn't until I reached the canned goods aisle that my autopilot failed. That's when I heard it. A cough. Soft, slightly rough, followed by a muttered complaint. $5 for soup highway robbery. My hand froze midway to a can of tomato sauce. Every muscle in my body locked. My heart stopped, then started again with a painful thud that I felt in my throat. I knew that voice. I knew that cough, the slight catch at the end, the way it always came in the morning before his coffee, the sound that had been the background music of my life for 38 years. I knew it the way I knew my own heartbeat. It was Jack's voice. I stood frozen in that grocery store aisle, my hand still suspended in midair, reaching for a can I would never grab. Around me, the world continued. A woman pushed past with her cart. Somewhere a child was crying. The overhead speakers crackled with an announcement about a sale on chicken breasts. But all of it was distant, muffled, like I was underwater. The voice came again, closer now. These used to be 2 for $5. Inflation's killing us. My breath caught. Not just the voice, the words, the complaint. How many times had Jack stood in this exact store, in this exact aisle, saying almost those exact words? How many Saturday mornings had we shopped together, him complaining about prices while I tried to hurry him along? Slowly, so slowly, it felt like my bones were made of ice that might shatter. I turned my head. He was 3 shelves down, back slightly toward me, examining a can of chicken noodle soup. Tall, maybe 6'1", with that particular slouch in the shoulders that comes from years of manual labor. Silver hair that refused to lie flat, the cowlick at his crown sticking up the way Jack's always did. He wore jeans and a blue jacket, not Jack's usual brown Carhartt, but similar enough. Work boots scuffed and dusty. His hand reached for another can, and I saw it, the crooked pinky finger on his left hand, the one that bent at an odd angle from a brake that never set right. Jack broke his pinky at 18 fixing his mother's roof. He fell, caught himself wrong, and they were too poor to go to the hospital, so they just taped it to the next finger and hoped. It healed crooked. I used to trace that crooked finger in bed at night, that small imperfection I loved because it was his. My vision started to blur. Tears, no. Shock. My body was going into shock. The can of tomato sauce slipped from my fingers. The crash was spectacular. Glass and tomato sauce exploded across the white tile floor, red splattering like blood, like something alive and dying. The sound echoed through the store. People gasped. Someone said, "Oh my God!" I barely registered it. My eyes were locked on the man as he turned, startled by the noise. And there he was, Jack Morrison, my husband, dead 6 months. Buried 6 months. Gone 6 months. Standing 15 feet away from me alive, holding a can of soup. Same broad face, slightly weathered from years of outdoor work. Same strong jawline, now softened with age. Same nose that had been broken once playing football in high school. Same scar above his right eyebrow, a crescent moon shape from when he walked into an open cabinet door in our first apartment, a story we'd laughed about for years. Everything the same. Everything impossible. "Jack," I whispered. My voice came out broken, barely a sound. I tried again, louder. "Jack." He looked directly at me, and for one terrible, beautiful second, I expected recognition. I expected his face to break into that crooked smile he had, the one where the left side went up higher than the right. I expected him to rush toward me to explain everything, to make this nightmare make sense. Instead, his face creased with polite confusion. "I'm sorry," he said, taking a step closer, but not too close, the distance you keep from a stranger, not your wife of 38 years. "Jack, it's me." I stepped toward him, my shoes squelching in the tomato sauce I'd forgotten I'd dropped. "It's Grace. It's me, Jack. What's happening? Where have you been?" People were staring now. A young employee appeared with a mop and a yellow wet floor sign, but she stopped, sensing something more than a simple cleanup was needed here. The man, Jack, my husband, shook his head slowly. "Ma'am, I think you have me confused with someone else. My name is Daniel. Daniel Foster." Daniel Foster. The name meant nothing to me. It was wrong, all wrong, like hearing a familiar song played in the wrong key. "No," I said, my voice rising. "No, you're Jack. Jack Morrison. You're my husband. We've been married for 38 years. We lived at 2847 Thurman Street. You're a contractor. You own Morrison Construction. I was babbling now, words spilling out in a desperate rush, trying to make reality align itself properly again. "You have a scar on your knee from when you fell off a bike when you were 12. You hate Brussels sprouts, but pretend to eat them to be polite. Your favorite movie is The Shawshank Redemption, and you cry every time at the end even though you've seen it 100 times. Your mother's name was Dorothy, and she died when you were 19, and you still miss her. You can't swim very well, and you're embarrassed about it, so you always make excuses not to go to the beach. Ma'am," his voice was gentle but firm, the voice you'd use with someone fragile, someone breaking. "I don't know you. I've never seen you before in my life." He took a step back, and that movement, that small step away from me, hurt more than anything else. Jack never stepped away from me. Not once in 38 years. Not even during our worst fights. Not even when I was being unreasonable or unfair. He always stayed close, always reached for my hand, always said, "We'll figure it out together." This man stepped away like I was a threat. "Look." I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. I pulled up my photos, scrolling frantically until I found one from last summer. Jack and me on our back porch, his arm around my shoulders, both of us smiling at the camera David had taken. I thrust the phone at him. "Look at this. This is you. This is us, last July, your birthday. You tried to grill steaks and burn them and blamed the grill, and I laughed, and—" He glanced at the screen. Just a quick glance, barely a second. But I saw something flicker in his eyes. A pause. A tightening around his mouth. Something. Then it was gone. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice flat now, final. "I've never seen this photo before. You're clearly going through something very difficult. Maybe you should sit down. Can someone get this lady some water?" The employee with the mop nodded and scurried away, grateful for a task that wasn't standing witness to whatever breakdown was happening in aisle 7. "Please," I begged, hating the sound of my own voice, hating the desperation in it. I grabbed his arm, his left arm, and he flinched, but didn't pull away. "Show me your hands. Please just show me your hands." He frowned, but held up both hands, palms out like someone surrendering. There it was. Left hand, pinky finger crooked as a question mark. The nail slightly thicker than the others from how the bone had healed wrong. I'd kissed that finger countless times. I'd held that hand through hospital visits and funerals and bad days and good days and all the ordinary days in between. "That finger," I said, pointing. "You broke it at 18. Fell off your mother's roof. It never healed right. You used to joke that it was your character finger." Something crossed his face then. Fear, guilt, I couldn't tell. It was there and gone too quickly. "I broke it fixing a fence when I was 15, he said quietly. "It's a common injury." "Your mother's name," I said desperately. Tell me your mother's name. Joan, he said without hesitation. Joan Foster. Joan, not Dorothy. Wrong name, wrong woman, wrong life. I have to go, he said abruptly. He set down the can of soup and grabbed his shopping basket. I hope you feel better. I hope you get the help you need. And then he was walking away, moving quickly down the aisle toward the checkout lanes. I stood there rooted to the spot, tomato sauce seeping into my shoes, watching my dead husband walk away from me like I was a stranger, like I was nothing. Ma'am? The employee was back with a bottle of water and a concerned expression. Are you okay? Should we call someone for you? I'm fine, I said automatically, though I was very far from fine. I took the water with numb fingers. Thank you. I'm sorry about the mess. It happens, she said kindly, already mopping up the sauce. Don't worry about it. But I was worried. I was terrified. Because as I watched that man, Jack Daniel, whoever he was, pay for his groceries and head toward the exit, one thought screamed louder than all the others. If my husband was alive and walking around using a different name, then who was in the grave? I'd cried over for 6 months. And more importantly, why was he pretending not to know me? I should have gone home. I should have driven straight back to my empty house, locked the door, and called my therapist. Dr. Reynolds had warned me about this complicated grief, she called it. She said sometimes people see their lost loved ones in crowds, hear their voices in other people's laughter, find them in the face of every stranger who shares a feature or a gesture. But this wasn't that. I knew it in my bones, in that deep place where 38 years of marriage lives. I stood in the Safeway parking lot, my hands gripping my car keys so tightly the metal bit into my palm. Through the store's big glass windows I could see him, Jack Daniel, whoever at the checkout. He was using cash, I noticed. Jack always used credit cards, kept every receipt in a shoebox for taxes. This man paid with bills, folded them back into his wallet without waiting for a receipt. Small things. Different things. But the way he folded those bills, pressing the edges flat with his thumb, making sure they all faced the same direction, that was pure Jack. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. This was insane. I was 62 years old, a retired elementary school teacher, a respectable widow who volunteered at the library every Thursday. I didn't follow strange men. I didn't stalk people in parking lots. But I didn't move toward my car. I stayed exactly where I was hidden between 2 SUVs, watching as he pushed his cart through the automatic doors. He walked to an old sedan, a white Subaru Outback, maybe 10 years old, with a dent in the rear passenger door and a faded bumper sticker I couldn't quite read. Not Jack's truck. Not the big silver F-150 he'd loved, the one he'd washed every Saturday morning, the one that supposedly went off Highway 26 6 months ago. He loaded his groceries methodically. Heavy items, first canned goods, milk. Then the lighter things, bred a bag of what looked like chips. Finally, eggs placed carefully on top. The exact same system Jack used, the one he'd taught me 35 years ago after I'd crushed a loaf of bread under a watermelon. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the license plate PDX7429. My hands were surprisingly steady now. The initial shock was fading, replaced by something else. Something cold and analytical, a part of me I didn't know I had. He finished loading, returned the cart to the corral. Jack always returned his cart, hated people who left them loose, and got in the driver's seat. The Subaru's engine coughed to life, and he pulled out of the parking lot, turning right onto Northwest 23rd. Before I could second-guess myself, I was in my own car following. I stayed 3, sometimes 4 car lengths back. Not close enough to be obvious, but not so far that I'd lose him at a light. My hands were slick on the steering wheel. Part of my brain, the rational, civilized part, was screaming at me to stop, to turn around, to go home and call someone. But the larger part, the part that had lived with Jack Morrison for 38 years, the part that had memorized every line of his face and every gesture of his hands, that part knew I was right. And that part was driving now. We headed east through downtown, past the Pearl District, where we used to go for anniversary dinners, past the Willamette River gleaming in the late morning sun. The city gave way to residential neighborhoods, houses getting smaller and more modest trees lining streets I rarely visited. He turned onto Southeast Hawthorne Boulevard. I followed at a careful distance. The street was busy enough that I didn't stand out quiet enough that I had to be cautious. Then he slowed and turned onto a side street. I hesitated for a moment before following. This street was quieter, lined with small houses and mature trees. Children's toys scattered in yards. An old man watering his lawn. The Subaru pulled into a driveway halfway down the block. I drove past, found a space 4 houses down, and parked. In my rearview mirror, I watched him get out, grab his grocery bags. The house was small, maybe 200 square feet, painted a cheerful mint green with white trim. A white picket fence, actual white picket fence, surrounded a neat yard with well-tended flower beds. Wind chimes hung from the porch, tinkling softly in the breeze. It looked like something from a children's book, wholesome and sweet, and completely wrong. He walked up to the front door, bags in hand. Before he could reach for his keys, the door swung open. A woman appeared. My breath caught. She was younger than me, maybe late 40s, early 50s at most. Dark brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup that I could see. She wore jeans and an oversized beige sweater that looked soft and lived in. She smiled when she saw him. Not a polite smile, not a neighbor's smile. This was warm, familiar, intimate. She leaned in and kissed his cheek. I felt the kiss like a physical blow. My hands clenched on the steering wheel, knuckles white. The woman took one of the grocery bags from his hands, saying something I couldn't hear. Her free hand rested on his arm, casually, comfortably, the touch of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. Then 2 children burst through the doorway. A girl, maybe 8 years old, with dark curly hair and a bright pink t-shirt. A boy younger, perhaps 6, wearing shorts and a dinosaur shirt. They ran straight at him, at Daniel, with their arms wide. "Grandpa," the girl's voice carried across the quiet street. "Grandpa, did you bring the ice cream?" "Grandpa." The word hit me like a freight train. He laughed. That laugh. Oh God, that laugh. Slightly lopsided, starting low and ending higher, the sound that had filled our kitchen for decades. The laugh I'd thought I'd never hear again. He crouched down, letting the children crash into him, juggling grocery bags and small bodies with practiced ease. The woman watched from the doorway, her hand over her heart, her face soft with love. They all went inside together, the man who was my husband, the woman who clearly wasn't me, the children who called him Grandpa, and the door closed behind them. I sat alone in my car, parked halfway down a street I'd never been on, watching a life I didn't know existed. The morning sun warmed my face through the windshield. I realized I was crying. Not sobbing, not gasping for air, just tears sliding down my cheeks in steady streams, soaking into the collar of my shirt. 38 years of marriage. 6 months of mourning. Nights spent alone in our bed, whispering his name into the darkness, begging for one more day, one more conversation, one more chance to say I love you. And here he was. Alive. Laughing. Holding children who weren't his grandchildren, couldn't be his grandchildren, because David was our only child, and David had no children. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and started taking pictures. The house, the car, the address number visible on the mailbox 2847, the wind chimes, the toys in the yard, everything. My hands trembled so badly that some photos came out blurred, but enough were clear. Clear enough to prove I wasn't crazy. Clear enough to prove this was real. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the sun to shift, for shadows to lengthen. Long enough to watch the lights come on inside the house as afternoon faded toward evening. Long enough to see Jack Daniel, whoever he was, appear briefly in the front window, close the curtains, and disappear again. Finally, when the streetlights began to flicker on, and I realized I'd been sitting there for nearly 6 hours, I started my car and drove away. I didn't remember the drive home. I have no memory of the route I took or whether I stopped at lights. My body moved on autopilot while my mind stayed locked in that moment, watching my supposedly dead husband laughing with a family that wasn't mine. I pulled into my driveway, our driveway, Jack's and mine, as the last light drained from the sky. The house loomed dark and empty. No lights in the windows. No one waiting inside. I sat in the garage with the engine off, staring at my phone at the photos I'd taken. I zoomed in on Jack's face, that familiar face, those familiar features. I compared it to the photos on my phone, our photos, our life, our 38 years. Every line matched. Every shadow. Every detail. This wasn't a look-alike. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't grief playing tricks on my mind. My husband was alive, and somehow impossibly I had buried someone else I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with a single lamp on the rest of the house, swallowed by darkness. Around me, spread out like evidence at a crime scene, were our photo albums. Jack and me on our wedding day, so young we looked like children playing dress-up. Jack holding baby David, tears streaming down his face, overwhelmed by fatherhood. Jack's 40th birthday party, flower in his hair from the cake fight I'd started. Our 25th anniversary trip to the coast, wrapped in blankets on the beach, watching the sunset. Last summer. Jack asleep on the couch, mouth open, the newspaper sliding from his lap. I'd taken that photo on a random Tuesday, thinking it was just another ordinary moment. I didn't know it would be one of the last. I moved between the albums and my phone, zooming in on the pictures I'd taken today. Jack's profile through the car window. Jack crouching down for the children. Jack's hand on that woman's back, casual and familiar. Every detail matched. The scar above his right eyebrow there in our wedding photos, there in today's surveillance shots. The slight asymmetry of his ears, something only I would notice from 3 decades of looking at him across the breakfast table. The way he held his weight more on his left leg, favoring the right knee he'd injured playing high school football. These weren't things grief invented. These weren't coincidences. These were facts written in flesh and bone. At 3:40 in the morning, I picked up my phone. My finger hovered over David's contact for a long moment. My son, our son, Jack's and mine. The only good thing we'd created together. David was 33 now, married 2 years to a woman named Jennifer. I'd never quite warmed to running Morrison Construction since his father's death. He'd been my rock through the funeral, through the estate settlement, through the endless paperwork that comes with losing a spouse. He'd held me while I cried. He'd handled everything I couldn't face. He'd been perfect. Too perfect, I hit call. It rang once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, a groggy voice answered. "Mom, it's almost 4 in the morning. Are you okay?" "I need you to come over," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, flat, mechanical, like I was reading from a script. "Right now." "Mom, what's wrong? Did something happen?" "Yes," I said. Something happened. A pause. I heard rustling Jennifer's voice in the background, confused and irritated. David's muffled response, then clearer. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. "Thank you." I ended the call and set the phone down carefully, like it might break. Or like I might break. I wasn't sure which. While I waited, I made coffee. Strong coffee, the kind Jack used to drink, the kind that could strip paint. I needed to be sharp for this conversation. I needed to be certain. David arrived in 45 minutes, not 30. He let himself in with his key the way he used to do as a teenager, the way he'd done countless times in the 6 months since Jack died. Since we thought Jack died. I heard his footsteps in the hall, quick and worried. He appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing sweatpants and a Portland State t-shirt, his dark hair sticking up on one side. He looked so much like Jack at 33 that my heart clenched. "Mom?" He crossed the room and put his hands on my shoulders, studying my face. "What's going on? You scared the hell out of me." I pointed to the kitchen table, to the phone lying there with a photo of Jack visible on the screen. "Sit down." Something in my tone made him freeze. "Mom." "Sit down." He sat. I stayed standing, my back against the counter, arms crossed over my chest. A barrier between us. "I saw your father yesterday," I said. David's face went carefully blank. "Mom, we've talked about this. Grief can make you see." "I followed him home." I continued speaking over him. "I took pictures. He's living at 2847 Southeast Hawthorne Boulevard. Mint greenhouse, white fence. He's calling himself Daniel Foster now. There's a woman. 2 children who call him Grandpa." The color drained from David's face. Not slowly, all at once, like someone had pulled a plug. His hands resting on the table began to tremble. "I want you to look at these photos," I said, my voice still that strange flat tone. "And then I want you to tell me the truth." I picked up my phone, opened the photo gallery, and set it in front of him. Then I stepped back, watching his face as he scrolled through the images. I saw the moment he recognized his father. His jaw clenched. His eyes squeezed shut. His shoulders began to shake. "David," I said softly, "how long have you known?" A single tear slid down his cheek, then another. Then he was crying, really crying, his whole body folding in on itself like he was trying to disappear. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "Mom, I'm so sorry." Those words, those terrible confirming words. Sorry meant guilt. Sorry meant knowledge. Sorry meant everything I'd feared was true. I pulled out the chair across from him and sat down slowly. My legs were shaking, but my voice stayed steady. "Tell me," I said. "Tell me everything. Right now." He wiped his face with his sleeve, took a shuddering breath, and began to speak. "Dad didn't die in an accident." The words hung between us like smoke, like poison, like the end of everything I'd believed. David lifted his head and looked at me with eyes so full of shame I almost looked away. Almost, but I'd earned the right to see this. I'd earned the right to watch my son break under the weight of his lies. "It started 2 years ago." He began, his voice hoarse. "I was helping Dad with the company finances. You remember when we were thinking about expanding into commercial projects?" I nodded. I remembered. Jack had been excited, talking about growth, about leaving a legacy for David to build on. I'd been proud of them working together, father and son, building something. "I found duplicate payments," David continued. 2 sets of utility bills, 2 insurance policies, 2 addresses receiving automatic payments from the business account. "The house on Hawthorne," Sam said. "Yes." He couldn't meet my eyes. I confronted him. I was angry, furious, actually. I thought he was embezzling, hiding money from you, maybe planning to leave. We had this huge fight in his office. He locked the door and told me everything. David's hands were shaking so badly he had to clasp them together on the table. "Her name is Sarah Chen. She's an architect. They met 18 years ago at a construction site. Dad said it started as a mistake just one time, but then," he swallowed hard, "then it became something more. 18 years. I did the math automatically, the way you do when your world is crumbling. David would have been 15. I would have been 44, going through menopause, gaining weight. I couldn't losing myself in substitute teaching and volunteer work while Jack traveled constantly for business. Or so I'd thought. The woman Sarah, she'd been married before," David continued. "Widowed young. Had a daughter, Emma, from her first marriage. Dad said he fell in love with them both, said they needed him in a way that—" He stopped, looked at me miserably. "In a way you didn't anymore." I felt that like a physical blow. "In a way I didn't need him." My voice came out sharp as broken glass. "I was his wife. We had a life together. I needed him every single day." "I know," David whispered. "I told him that. I told him he was being selfish, that he needed to end it, that he owed you honesty at least. But he said—" Another pause, another breath like he was drowning. "He said if you found out, you'd divorce him. You'd take half of everything, the company, the house, his retirement. Everything he'd spent 30 years building." "Everything we built," I corrected. "I worked too. I supported him through the lean years. I skipped vacations so he could buy equipment. I ate peanut butter sandwiches so he could hire extra crew. We built that company together." David nodded, tears streaming freely now. "I know. God, Mom, I know. But Dad, he was terrified of losing it all. And his voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I was terrified too." "Of what?" "Of losing my inheritance. Of the business being torn apart in a divorce. He looked up at me, and I saw it then, the thing I'd been dreading. Not just guilt. Calculation. Of being poor again." Poor. We'd never been poor, not really. Tight sometimes, especially in the early years, but never poor. But David remembered those years differently than I did. He remembered hand-me-down clothes and generic cereal, and "we can't afford that," said too many times. "So you chose his lies over my truth," I said. "You chose money over your mother." "I told myself I was protecting you," David said desperately. "Dad promised he'd end it. He said he just needed time to figure out how to do it without destroying everything. I believed him, or I wanted to believe him. For 2 years I watched and waited and told myself he was going to fix it. But he didn't fix it," I said. "He made it worse." David nodded. 6 months ago, he came to me with a plan. He said he'd found a way out that wouldn't hurt anyone. A way to end his double life, be with Sarah, and make sure you were taken care of financially. The fake death. My voice was steady, almost conversational. Some distant part of me was impressed by how calm I sounded, how collected when inside I was screaming. "Yes." David wiped his face. "There was a man, Marcus Webb. He'd worked for Morrison Construction for 10 years. Good guy, quiet, kept to himself. Divorced, no kids except a niece he barely knew. And he was dying." I felt my stomach drop. "Dying. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, maybe 3 months left, the doctor said. He was in pain, couldn't work anymore, drowning in medical bills. Dad approached him with an offer. Jesus Christ, I breathed. Your father bribed a dying man. $50,000, David said, enough to pay off Marcus's medical debt and leave something for his niece Tiffany. In exchange, when Marcus died, Dad would use his identity to fake his own death. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table, forcing myself to breathe. Tell me exactly how it happened. David took a shaky breath. Marcus died at home naturally 3 days before the accident. His niece called Dad. He'd given her a number to reach him when the time came. Dad and I went to Marcus's apartment that night. He stopped, looked like he might be sick. We put Marcus's body in Dad's truck, dressed him in Dad's clothes, his wedding ring, his watch, everything. I looked down at my own hands at the matching gold band I still wore, my wedding ring, on a corpse's finger for the past 6 months. Then Dad drove to Columbia River Gorge, David continued. I followed in another car. It was late after midnight raining. No traffic, no cameras in that section of the highway. Dad positioned the truck, put Marcus in the driver's seat, and we... Another pause. We pushed it over the edge. You watched your father fake his death, I said slowly. You watched him put a dead man in a truck and destroy it. You helped him commit fraud, identity theft, and desecration of a corpse. And then you came home and hugged me at the funeral. David's face crumpled completely. I thought I was helping. You thought nothing. I snapped my composure, finally cracking. You didn't think about me standing at that grave crying over a stranger. You didn't think about me waking up every morning for 6 months wishing I was dead too. You didn't think about anything except yourself and your goddamn inheritance. The dental records, I said suddenly, my mind racing. The police identified him through dental records. How did you fake those? David looked even more miserable if that was possible. I have a friend who works in medical records at the clinic Dad used. He owed me money gambling debts. I had him swap the digital files. Marcus's records became Jack Morrison's records. It wasn't perfect, but the body was burned badly enough that no one looked too closely. And Dr. Cooper. I remembered our family doctor, the kind man with gray hair who'd signed the death certificate. Did you bribe him too? $10,000, David admitted. He didn't examine the body, said it was too traumatic for the family. He based his signature on the preliminary coroner report, which was based on the fake dental records. It was a chain of lies, Mom, each one supporting the next. And the money, I asked. The life insurance, the business assets, all of it. Dad had been moving money for 2 years, David said. Small amounts at first, then larger. He created the Daniel Foster identity fake Social Security number, driver's license, credit history. Everything. He transferred about $800,000 into accounts under that name. The rest came to me through the estate. I sat back in my chair feeling like I'd been hollowed out. The life insurance, $2 million. You were supposed to be taken care of, David said weakly. Dad made sure you got enough to be comfortable. The house is paid off, you have the insurance money, your pension. You think this is about money? I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. You think I can be bought? That $2 million makes up for burying a stranger while my husband laughs with another family. No, I would have lived in a cardboard box if it meant having the truth, I said. I would have given up every penny we had if it meant not being lied to. But you and your father decided for me. You decided I was too weak to handle divorce, too pathetic to survive without my precious house and my precious money. You decided to let me grieve for 6 months, rather than trust me with the truth. David stood too, reaching for me. Mom, please. Don't touch me. I stepped back. Right now I don't even know who you are. My son would never have done this. My son was raised better. My son knew the difference between right and wrong. I'm still your son, he said, crying openly now. I made terrible mistakes, but I'm still your son. I love you. Love? I laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. You don't betray people you love. You don't let them cry themselves to sleep every night while you cash their dead husband's checks. That's not love, David. That's something else entirely. I walked to the kitchen door, opened it. I want you to leave now. Mom, we need to talk about this. We need to figure out what to do. What I'm going to do, I said quietly, is what I should have done the moment I saw your father alive. I'm going to get proof. I'm going to document everything. And then I'm going to make sure both of you face consequences for what you've done. David's face went white. You can't, Mom. If you go to the police, I'll go to prison. Dad will go to prison. Morrison Construction will be destroyed. Everything. Everything was already destroyed, I said. The moment you chose to lie to me, everything was destroyed. I'm just making sure the truth gets its day. Please, he begged. Please think about what this will do to the family. Get out of my house. Mom, get out. He flinched like I'd struck him. Then slowly he walked past me to the front door. He stopped in the doorway, looked back. I really am sorry, for what that's worth. It's worth nothing, I said. Sorry doesn't bring back 6 months of my life. Sorry doesn't undo what you've done. Sorry is just another lie you tell yourself so you can sleep at night. He left without another word. I closed the door behind him, locked it, and stood there in the silence of my house, my empty, honest, terrible house, and felt something shift inside me. I was done crying. I was done grieving. I was done being the sad widow everyone pitied. I didn't sleep after David left. Instead, I spent the rest of the night at my laptop researching. Private investigators in Portland. Ones who specialized in fraud cases and financial crimes and tracking people who didn't want to be found. By 7 in the morning, I'd narrowed it down to 3 options. By 8, I'd made my choice. Rebecca Walsh, former Portland police detective, now running her own investigation firm. Her website showed a woman in her mid-40s with steel gray hair and eyes that looked like they'd seen everything and weren't impressed by most of it. Her reviews were glowing found my ex-husband's hidden assets. Proved my business partner was embezzling. Got me the evidence I needed when everyone else said it was impossible. I called the number listed. It rang twice before a crisp voice answered. Walsh Investigations. My name is Grace Morrison, I said. My husband faked his death 6 months ago and I need proof before I go to the police. There was a pause. Then I can see you at 10 this morning. Do you have documentation? Photos, bank records, my son's recorded confession. I'd set my phone to record before David arrived. Some part of me, even in shock, had known I'd need evidence. Bring everything. Address is on the website. Don't be late. She hung up. I liked her immediately. Rebecca Walsh's office was in a brick building downtown 3rd floor, a frosted glass door with simple black lettering, Walsh Investigations. Inside the office was small but professional. 1 desk, 2 client chairs, filing cabinets along one wall, and a diploma from Portland State along with what looked like a commendation from the police department. Rebecca herself looked exactly like her website photo, gray hair cut short, sharp blue eyes, wearing jeans and a button-down shirt like she might need to chase someone at a moment's notice. She was probably 45, but carried herself like someone who'd lived several hard lives. Mrs. Morrison. She shook my hand with a grip that could crack walnuts. Sit. Tell me everything. I sat, and I told her everything. The grocery store encounter. Following Jack to Hawthorne. David's confession. The fake death, Marcus Webb, the dental records, the money, all of it. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad in tight, precise handwriting. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me for a long moment. Mrs. Morrison, she said finally, if what you're telling me is true, and I believe it is, this goes beyond infidelity or even fraud. This is conspiracy, identity theft, insurance fraud, falsifying death records, and potentially interference with a corpse. We're talking multiple felonies. Your husband and your son could each face 15 to 20 years in federal prison. I know, I said. My voice didn't shake. You understand that once we start this investigation, there's no taking it back. Once I gather evidence and you decide to pursue charges, your son will likely be arrested. Your husband will go to prison. The company will probably be seized as proceeds of crime. Your family, as you knew it, will cease to exist. My family ceased to exist 6 months ago, I said. I just didn't know it yet. Rebecca studied me. Most people in your position, older women, wives of 30-plus years, they come in angry, but they leave without following through. They decide they'd rather live with the lie than face the fallout. Are you going to be like most people, Mrs. Morrison? I thought about that. About going home to my empty house, to my empty life, to my grave visits and grief counseling and well-meaning friends telling me to move on. About living the rest of my years as the poor widow who lost her husband tragically, while Jack laughed with his other family and David cashed checks built on lies. No, I said. I'm not like most people. Rebecca smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a woman who'd spent 20 years putting bad people in prison and missed it. Good, Then let's destroy them. She pulled out a contract. My retainer is $15,000. That covers 2 weeks of investigation surveillance, financial forensics, witness interviews, document analysis. If we need more time, we'll discuss it. I work with a forensic accountant and sometimes a tech specialist. Their fees are separate but reasonable. I pulled out my checkbook, the one connected to the account with my life insurance money, the blood money I'd gotten for burying a stranger, and wrote the check without hesitation. I want everything documented, I said as I signed. Not suspected, not probable, proven. I want evidence that would stand up in federal court. That's the only kind of evidence I gather, Rebecca said. She took the check, filed it efficiently. I'll need copies of everything you have, photos, bank statements, David's confession recording any documentation of your husband's assets before his supposed death. Can you get me access to Morrison Construction's financial records? I'm still listed as a beneficiary on the estate, I said. David hasn't changed that yet. I should be able to request copies through the company accountant. Do it. Today. The more paper trail we have, the better. She stood and I realized the meeting was over. I'll start with surveillance on your husband, confirm his identity, his routines, his connections to this Sarah Chen woman. I'll also look into Marcus Webb, find his actual death certificate, talk to his niece. And I'll trace the money movements from Morrison Construction. How long will this take? If your son told you the truth, and people usually do when they break down like that, I should have enough evidence in a week, maybe 10 days. After that, it's your decision what to do with it. She walked me to the door, then stopped. Mrs. Morrison, can I ask you something? Of course. Why now? You could have just confronted your husband, demanded answers, maybe even reconciled. Why go straight to evidence gathering and criminal charges? I thought about that grocery store aisle. About the way Jack had looked at me like I was a stranger. About him stepping back away from me like I was something dangerous or pitiable. About 6 months of grief that had been completely unnecessary. Because they didn't just lie to me, I said. They let me mourn. They let me stand at a grave and cry. They let me tear myself apart with guilt, wondering if I'd been a good enough wife, if I'd loved him enough, if there was something I could have done to save him. They let me suffer in ways they can't even imagine. And they did it for money. I met Rebecca's eyes. You asked if I'm like most people. Most people might forgive that. I'm not most people. Rebecca nodded slowly. Good, because what we're about to do, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt you, hurt your son, hurt your family name. But it's going to hurt them more. Are you ready for that? I've been ready since I saw my husband pretend not to know my face. Rebecca moved fast. By that afternoon, she'd already started surveillance on the Hawthorne house. By the next morning, she'd called with her first report. Your husband leaves the house every morning at 7:30, she said. Drives to a small construction consulting firm in Milwaukee, works under the table cash payments, no official employment record. He's good about staying under the radar, no credit cards, no documented income, living entirely within Sarah Chen's legitimate household. What about Sarah? I asked. Does she know? That's what I'm trying to determine. I've got a background check running on her. Widowed 10 years ago, works as a project architect for a mid-size firm, owns the house outright paid off with her first husband's life insurance. Credit score is excellent. By all accounts, she's a genuine, honest person. Then she doesn't know, I said with certainty. Jack wouldn't risk telling her. If she knew he was married, had faked his death, she'd turn him in. You're probably right, Rebecca agreed. Which means we have another victim here. I'll need to approach her eventually, but let's get our other evidence lined up first. Over the next week, Rebecca's operation expanded. She had a forensic accountant named Patricia Kim analyzing Morrison Construction's finances. She had a tech specialist tracking down the fake Daniel Foster identity, finding the forged documents, tracing the Social Security number back to its illegal creation. And she found Marcus Webb. Marcus died exactly when your son said Rebecca told me over coffee at a diner where we'd started meeting daily. March 15th, pancreatic cancer at his apartment in Southeast Portland. I spoke with his niece, Tiffany Webb. She confirmed she received $50,000 from Morrison Construction listed as bereavement payment and back wages. Did she know what it was really for? I asked. No. She thought your husband was just being generous to an employee who'd worked hard for years. She was grateful. Rebecca slid a folder across the table. But here's where it gets interesting. I pulled Marcus's actual medical records, his real dental records, his real cause of death. Then I compared them to the records filed for Jack Morrison after the accident. I opened the folder. Inside were 2 sets of X-rays side by side. "These are completely different people," Rebecca said. "Different dental work, different bone structure, different everything. Someone swapped the files in the system, but they weren't smart enough to make them match perfectly. A competent medical examiner would have caught this immediately." "But no one looked closely because the body was burned," I said. "Exactly. The death certificate was signed by Dr. Christopher Cooper, your family physician, without him actually examining the body. I did some digging. Dr. Cooper received a $10,000 consulting fee from David Morrison the week before your husband's supposed death." I felt sick. Everyone was paid off. Everyone was part of it. Not everyone. The coroner who did the preliminary examination was legitimate. He just relied on the dental records your son had falsified. The police investigators were legitimate. They had no reason to suspect fraud. It was a perfect storm of small corruptions that added up to a big lie. Rebecca pulled out another document. "And then there's the money. Patricia traced $800,000 in transfers from Morrison Construction to various accounts over 2 years. Small amounts at first, then larger. It all eventually flows to Daniel Foster, your husband's fake identity." She showed me the trail. Bank statements, wire transfers, cash withdrawals. A web of financial crime stretching back 2 years, maybe longer. "The life insurance company is going to want this money back," Rebecca said. $2 million paid out on a fraudulent death claim. Your husband and son will owe restitution, probably triple damages for fraud. Even if they liquidate everything, they won't be able to pay it all." "Good," I said. The word came out harder than I meant it, but I didn't take it back. Rebecca looked at me with something like approval. "You're tougher than you look, Mrs. Morrison." "I've had to be," I said, though I'm only just realizing that now. The evidence mounted. Rebecca photographed Jack 100 times over the week, coming and going from the Hawthorne house, playing with the children in the yard, kissing Sarah goodbye in the morning. Every photo was time-stamped, geotagged, undeniable. She obtained copies of the forged documents, the fake Daniel Foster birth certificate, the Social Security card, the driver's license. She traced them back to their source, an online forum where David had apparently learned how to create false identities. "Your son was thorough," Rebecca admitted. "He researched this for months, maybe a year, created a complete digital footprint for Daniel Foster, credit history, rental history, even social media accounts that go back 5 years. It's almost impressive if it wasn't so criminal." "He got that from his father," I said. "Jack was always meticulous. He'd plan projects months in advance, every detail accounted for. I used to love that about him. Now I just felt betrayed by it." On the 8th day, Rebecca called me early. "We need to meet, now. I found something else." I drove to her office, my heart pounding. She was waiting with her laptop open, looking grim. "I've been tracking your son's finances," she said. "The money that came to him from the estate, about $600,000 after taxes and estate fees. I wanted to see where it went." She turned the laptop to show me. Bank statements, credit card bills, property records. "Most of it's gone," she said. "David's been spending heavily. New car, expensive vacations, a down payment on a vacation home in Bend. He and his wife Jennifer have been living well beyond their previous means." But that wasn't what made my stomach drop. Rebecca scrolled to another document. "He's also been making monthly payments," she said quietly. $5,000 every month to an account in Sarah Chen's name." I stared at the screen. "He's been paying her—" "Not her directly. The account is actually in Emma Chen's name, Sarah's daughter. It's structured as a college savings fund." Understanding hit me like a freight train. "Jack asked him to. He wanted to make sure they were taken care of." "It looks that way," Rebecca said. "Your son hasn't just been covering for your husband. He's been actively supporting the other family. $5,000 a month for 6 months. That's $30,000 of your life insurance money going to the woman your husband left you for." I sat down heavily. This was worse than I'd imagined. David hadn't just helped Jack fake his death, he'd become Jack's accomplice in maintaining his new life. He'd chosen that family over me, actively, repeatedly, month after month. "I want to stop those payments," I said, "today, right now." Rebecca nodded. "I'll call your lawyer. We can file for emergency control of the estate funds citing suspicious activity. The payments will freeze within hours." "Do it." She made the call while I sat there numb. The payments stopped. $30,000 that should have helped me grieve. that should have helped me rebuild that had instead funded my husband's betrayal. Frozen. Done. Over. What else do you need? I asked when Rebecca finished. Just one more thing, she said. She pulled out a small recording device. I need you to confront your husband, face to face, wearing a wire. Get him to admit everything on tape. I looked at the device. It was smaller than a pack of gum, innocuous lethal. When? I asked. Tomorrow, Rebecca said. I've been watching their schedule. Sarah works late on Thursdays. The kids have after-school activities until 5. Your husband will be alone at the house from 1 to 4:30. That's your window. What do I say? The truth. You know who he is. You know what he did. You want to understand why. Most people, when they're confronted with evidence they can't deny, they confess. They want to explain themselves. We just need him to do it on tape. She showed me how to wear the wire clipped to my bra, nearly invisible under a sweater. We practiced for an hour. What to say, how to stay calm, how to keep him talking. What if he runs? I asked. He won't. He's been Daniel Foster for 6 months now. He feels safe. He thinks he got away with it. That confidence will make him careless. And if he gets violent, Rebecca's face was serious. Do you think he would? I thought about 38 years of marriage. Jack had never raised a hand to me, never even raised his voice much. He solved problems with planning and money, not violence. No, I said. He'll want to talk his way out of it. That's who he is. Then you'll be fine, Rebecca said. I'll be in a van 2 houses down listening to everything. Police will be on standby 4 blocks away. If anything feels wrong, you say the safe word, emergency, and we come in immediately. I nodded. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from anticipation. After 38 years of marriage, 6 months of grief, and 1 week of investigation, I was finally going to look my husband in the eye and hear the truth. The night before the confrontation, I couldn't eat. I tried to make myself a sandwich turkey and cheese, the kind Jack used to pack for lunch, but my stomach rebelled at the first bite. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table with a photo album open in front of me. Our album. 38 years of smiles and holidays and ordinary Tuesdays. I realized I was saying goodbye. Not to Jack. I'd said goodbye to him 6 months ago at a funeral for a man who wasn't my husband. I was saying goodbye to the Grace who'd existed in these photos. The Grace who'd believed in forever and trust and the sanctity of marriage vows. That Grace was gone. In her place was someone harder. Someone who could wear a wire and set a trap for her own husband. Someone who could watch her son cry and feel nothing but cold satisfaction. I wasn't sure I liked this new Grace, but I respected her. And right now, respect mattered more than liking. My phone buzzed. Rebecca, everything's set. I'll pick you up at 12:45 tomorrow. Wear something comfortable. Bring ID and your wedding photo, the one from the bedroom. The wedding photo. I looked up at it still on the mantel. So young, so hopeful, so stupid. I texted back, I'll be ready. That night I did something I hadn't done in 6 months. I took off my wedding ring. It slid off easily. I'd lost weight since Jack died, since he pretended to die and left a pale indent on my finger. I held it up to the light, reading the inscription inside, Forever Jack. Forever had lasted 38 years and 6 months. Not quite the eternity we'd promised. I set the ring on the kitchen counter and went to bed, alone in the center of the mattress, not clinging to my side anymore. There was no one to make room for. There never had been, not really. Jack had been sleeping in someone else's bed for 18 years. I'd just been too naive to notice. Rebecca picked me up at exactly 12:45. She was driving an unmarked van, dark gray, anonymous. In the back was equipment monitors, recording devices, a laptop showing a map with our location marked in red. How are you feeling? She asked as I climbed in. Like I'm about to ruin my life, I said honestly. You're not ruining it. You're reclaiming it. She handed me the wire. Put this on. I'll wait here. I went to the bathroom of a nearby coffee shop and clipped the device in place exactly as we'd practiced. The wire ran down my side, barely noticeable under my blue sweater, not Jack's favorite color, not anymore, just the color I felt strong in. When I came back, Rebecca tested the connection. Say something. Testing 1, 2, 3, I said. My voice came through the speakers in the van, clear and loud. Too loud. I could hear my own fear in it. You'll do fine, Rebecca said, reading my expression. Remember, you don't owe him kindness. You don't owe him understanding. You only owe yourself the truth. We drove to Southeast Hawthorne in silence. The mint green house looked cheerful in the afternoon sun, so wholesome and innocent. A lie like everything else. Rebecca parked 2 houses down. "I'll be listening to everything," she said. "Police are 4 blocks away. Detective Martinez, he's good people. If you feel unsafe, say the word and we move. But I think you'll be okay. Your husband is a coward, not a violent man. Cowards talk." I nodded. My mouth was dry. "One more thing," Rebecca said. She handed me a folder. "This is everything we've found. Photos, bank records, Marcus Webb's real dental records, the forged documents, all of it. If he denies anything, you have proof." I took the folder. It was heavy. The weight of truth usually is. "Go," Rebecca said. "And Grace, make him face what he's done. Don't let him minimize it or explain it away. Make him say the words." I got out of the van. The walk to the front door felt like miles. Each step was a choice. Keep going or turn back truth or comfortable lies, justice or peace. I chose truth. I rang the doorbell. Wind chimes sang above my head, light and sweet and completely wrong for this moment. Footsteps inside. The door opened. And there he was, Jack Morrison, my husband. Wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, reading glasses pushed up on his head, looking older than I remembered, but unmistakably him. His face went through several emotions in rapid succession: confusion, recognition, fear, and finally resignation. "Grace," he said quietly. Not Eleanor, like he'd called me in the grocery store. Grace, my real name, my real identity. He knew the game was over. "Hello, Jack," I said. My voice didn't shake. "I think we need to talk." He stood there for a long moment, hand on the doorframe blocking the entrance. I could see him calculating, trying to figure out what I knew, what I could prove, whether he could still lie his way out. Then his shoulders sagged. "Yeah," he said. "I guess we do." He stepped aside. "Come in." I walked into my husband's other life, wearing a wire carrying evidence of his crimes, ready to hear him confess to 18 years of lies. And as the door closed behind me, I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. I was done being afraid. Now I was just ready for this to be over. The inside of Jack's other home was exactly what I'd expected and nothing I wanted to see. Family photos on the walls. Jack with Sarah, Jack with the children, Jack at birthday parties and holidays I knew nothing about. A life fully lived, completely separate from me. "The back porch," Jack said quietly. "Sarah doesn't get home until 6. We can talk there." I followed him through the living room, past a kitchen that smelled like coffee and cinnamon, out onto a small covered porch overlooking a tidy backyard. There were 2 chairs, a small table between them. How many evenings had he sat here peaceful and content while I cried myself to sleep 40 minutes away? He sat heavily, and I noticed then how much older he looked. More gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes. Good. I hoped every lie had carved itself into his face. I remained standing. I had the folder in my hands and I set it on the table between us like a weapon. "How long have you known?" he asked. "That you were alive 10 days, that you were a liar." I smiled coldly. "Apparently 18 years. He flinched. "Grace, Don't." My voice came out sharp as glass. "Don't say my name like that, like we're still married, like you have any right to familiarity." "We are still married," he said quietly. "Legally. The death certificate was fraudulent." "So our marriage was the only real thing." I laughed bitter. "How generous of you." He looked down at his hands, those hands I'd held for 38 years. "I never meant for it to go this far." "Then tell me exactly how far you meant it to go." I sat down then across from him and pulled out my phone. "And Jack, I should tell you this conversation is being recorded. Everything you say is being documented. So I suggest you tell the truth. The whole truth. For once in your miserable, cowardly life." His face went pale. "You're recording this?" "I'm gathering evidence," I corrected, "for the fraud charges, the identity theft charges, the insurance fraud charges. Should I go on?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "What do you want to know?" "Everything," I said. "Starting with Sarah. How did it really start?" He took a shaky breath. 18 years ago, she was the architect on a commercial project Morrison Construction bid on. We met at the site walkthrough. She was brilliant, Grace. sharp and funny and passionate about her work. We started having coffee to discuss the project. Then lunch, then an affair, I finished. Yes, he couldn't meet my eyes. It was supposed to be just physical at first, a mistake, something that would end when the project finished. But then I met Emma, her daughter from her first marriage. She was 6 years old, this sweet kid who'd lost her dad to a heart attack 2 years before. And Sarah, she wasn't demanding or needy. She didn't expect me to fix everything or be everything. She let me breathe. And I suffocated you. My voice was dangerously calm. No, that's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant, I said. I was the burden. The wife who expected things like honesty and fidelity and presence. So you found someone easier. It wasn't like that, he protested weakly. Then what was it like, Jack? Explain it to me. Make me understand how you justified 18 years of lies. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd seen 10,000 times usually when he was stressed about work or money, never when he was stressed about destroying his wife. The first year I tried to end it, he said, multiple times, but every time I told Sarah it was over, I'd go home and feel like I was drowning. You were so focused on your teaching, your volunteer work, your book club. We barely talked anymore except about bills and household stuff. I felt like a stranger in my own home. So you found another home, I gestured to the house around us, and another family, and another identity. Not at first, he said. At first I was just existing in 2 places, coming home to you, going to Sarah's apartment, splitting my time, splitting myself. I told you I was traveling for work. You never questioned it. Because I trusted you. My composure cracked. Because in 38 years of marriage, you'd never given me a reason not to trust you. That was my mistake, apparently. Believing in my husband's integrity. I know, he whispered. God, Grace, I know. And Don't say you're sorry. I cut him off. Sorry is for spilling coffee or missing a birthday. Sorry doesn't cover 18 years of systematic deception. Sorry doesn't cover faking your death and letting me mourn. He was crying now, silent tears running down his face. Good. I hoped he drowned in them. Tell me about Marcus Webb, I said. Tell me how you convinced a dying man to help you commit fraud. Jack wiped his face. Marcus was terminal. 3 months left, maybe less. He was in agony, couldn't afford the pain management he needed. His niece was going to lose her apartment because she'd taken time off work to care for him. I offered him a way to help her. You bribed a dying man? I said flatly. I gave him a choice, Jack argued. He was going to die anyway. This way his death meant something. His niece got money, I got a way out, you got financial security. I got lies. I slammed my hand on the table. I got 6 months of grief and trauma and nights where I wanted to die too because I couldn't imagine life without you. And all of it was unnecessary. You could have just divorced me, Jack. You could have been honest. You would have taken everything, he said quietly. The business, the house, half my retirement. Everything I'd spent 30 years building. There it was, the real truth. So you killed yourself instead, I said. Figured it was easier to be dead than poor. I figured it was easier for everyone, he said. You got the life insurance $2 million, Grace. The house paid off. Security for the rest of your life. I got to be with Sarah without destroying the company. David got to keep his inheritance. Everyone won. Everyone except me, I said. Because I lost my husband. Or I thought I did. Turns out I lost him 18 years ago, I just didn't know it. I opened the folder and spread the contents across the table. Photos of him with Sarah, bank statements showing the money transfers, Marcus Webb's real dental records, the forged death certificate, the fake Daniel Foster identity documents. This is what I've gathered in 10 days, I said. This is what a private investigator and a forensic accountant and a tech specialist found when they actually looked. This is proof of everything you've done. Jack stared at the documents, his face ashen. What are you going to do? I'm going to make sure you face consequences, I said calmly. I'm going to give this evidence to the police. You'll be arrested for insurance fraud, identity theft, falsifying death records, and conspiracy. You're looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison. Maybe more if they decide to add charges about Marcus Webb's body. Grace, please. And David, I continued, will be charged as an accomplice. He'll lose his business license. He'll go to prison too. Everything you tried to protect by faking your death, it's going to be destroyed anyway. The only difference is now I won't have to live with the lie." "What about Sarah?" Jack asked desperately. "What about Emma? They didn't do anything wrong." "Didn't they?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the bank records Rebecca had found. "David's been sending $5,000 a month to an account in Emma's name. Money from my life insurance. Money meant to help me grieve. Has been funding your new family for 6 months." Jack's face crumpled completely. "I told David to take care of them, to make sure they were okay." "Does Sarah know?" I interrupted. "Does she know you're married? Does she know you faked your death? Does she know Daniel Foster isn't real?" He shook his head miserably. "No. She thinks I'm a widower. She thinks my wife Eleanor died of cancer 7 years ago. She thinks we met after I'd already lost you." I sat back, stunned despite myself. "So you lied to both of us. You let me think you were dead, and you let her think I was dead. You didn't choose between us, you just chose yourself." "I love her," Jack said. "I love Sarah and Emma. I love the life we built." "You don't love anyone," I said coldly. "Love doesn't look like this. Love is honest. Love is sacrificial. Love shows up even when it's hard. You don't know anything about love, Jack. You only know about comfort and convenience and taking the easy way out." A car door slammed somewhere nearby. Jack's head snapped up, panicked. "That's Sarah's car. She's home early." "Good," I said, standing. "She deserves to know the truth, too. Grace, please don't do this to her." "I'm not doing anything to her," I said. "You did this 18 years ago when you started lying, 6 months ago when you faked your death, today when you thought you could keep living this lie forever. This is all you, Jack." The back door opened. A woman's voice called out, "Daniel, whose car is that in front? Are you expecting?" She appeared on the porch and stopped dead. Sarah Chen, architect widow, innocent victim of my husband's lies. She looked between Jack and me, confused. "Daniel," she said. "Who is this?" I stood. "My name is Grace Morrison," I said clearly. "I'm his wife, his legal wife of 38 years, and we need to talk." Sarah Chen took the news better than I expected. Or maybe worse. She didn't scream or cry or rage. She just went very still, very quiet, like something inside her had simply shut off. We sat at her kitchen table, her home, her space, while Jack stood in the doorway looking like he wanted to disappear. I showed her everything. The evidence folder, the photos from our life together, our actual wedding certificate, the proof that Daniel Foster was a fabrication and Jack Morrison was very much alive. "How long?" she finally asked, her voice hollow. "How long were you married while we were together?" 18 years, I said. "He met you in 2006. We didn't separate. We were still living together, still married, still—" I couldn't finish. "Still intimate?" she asked bluntly. "Were you still sleeping with him?" "Yes," I said. "Until 6 months ago when I thought he died." Sarah turned to Jack with a look of such profound betrayal that even I felt it. "You told me Eleanor died of cancer. You showed me a death certificate. You cried about losing her." "I forged it," Jack admitted. "I forged a lot of things." "Get out," Sarah said quietly. "Sarah, please let me explain." "Get out." She stood up, shaking. "Get out of my house. Get away from my daughter. Get away from me." Jack tried to reach for her. She stepped back like he was contaminated. "Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me again. Everything between us was built on lies. Everything I believed about you was fiction. You don't get to explain. You don't get to apologize. You just get out." He looked at me desperate. "Grace, tell her." "Tell her what?" I asked. "That you're worth forgiving. You're not. You're not worth either of our forgiveness. You're worth exactly what you're about to get consequences." He left, just walked out of the house, got in his car and drove away. Neither Sarah nor I tried to stop him. We had nothing left to say to him. After he was gone, Sarah poured us both coffee with shaking hands. "Did you know?" she asked. "Before 6 months ago, did you know about me?" "No," I said. "I trusted him completely. I thought our marriage was happy. I thought we were solid. I was wrong about everything." "Me too." She laughed, bitter and broken. "I thought I'd found someone good after losing my first husband. I thought Daniel Jack, whatever his name is, I thought he was honest and kind and safe. I let him into my daughter's life. I let Emma call him Grandpa. She started crying, then quiet sobs that shook her whole body. What do I tell my daughter? How do I explain that the man she's loved for 3 years doesn't even exist? You tell her the truth, I said. That's all we can do now. Tell the truth and try to rebuild. Are you going to press charges? She asked. Yes, I said. He committed multiple felonies. He stole from me not just money, but time and grief and hope. He stole from you too, years of your life built on lies. He needs to face that. Sarah nodded slowly. Good, because if you weren't going to do it, I would. I left her there in her cheerful mint green house that would never feel safe again. As I walked to Rebecca's van, I felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just exhaustion. Bringing down the lies was necessary. But it didn't feel good. The arrests happened fast. Rebecca delivered the evidence to the district attorney's office on Friday morning. By Friday afternoon, warrants had been issued for both Jack and David Morrison. Jack was arrested at a motel near the airport. He'd packed a bag and was apparently planning to run. They caught him at check-in, still using the Daniel Foster ID, which just added another charge. David was arrested at Morrison Construction in front of his employees. Rebecca told me he didn't resist, didn't protest, just put his hands behind his back and let them cuff him. His wife, Jennifer, called me crying, asking how I could do this to my own son. I told her David did this to himself the moment he chose money over integrity. Then I hung up. 2 weeks later, I visited David in county jail. The visitation room was gray and cold, everything separated by plexiglass conversations held through phones that smelled like disinfectant and desperation. David looked terrible. Thinner, paler like prison had already begun eating him alive. When he picked up the phone, his hand shook. "Mom," he said. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I said honestly. "But I needed to see you, needed to say some things." "I'm sorry," he started. "I know I said that before, but I mean it. Every day in here I think about what I did to you." "Do you know what the worst part is?" I interrupted. "Not the lies, not even the betrayal. It's that you saw me suffering for 6 months and did nothing. You watched me cry at a grave for a stranger. You held my hand at a fake funeral. You told me it would get easier with time. And all of it was theater to you. All of it was just part of maintaining the lie." "I wanted to tell you," he said. "So many times I almost—" "But you didn't," I said. "You chose your inheritance. You chose protecting your father's assets. You chose money over your mother's sanity. And that's something I don't know how to forgive." David's face crumpled. "I was weak. Dad was so convincing, said it was the only way, said you'd be better off." "I wouldn't have been better off," I said. "I would have been devastated and angry and hurt. But I would have been living in reality. You took that from me. You let me live in a fantasy where my husband died tragically instead of the truth that he abandoned me for a more convenient life." "What do you want me to say?" David asked desperately. "What can I possibly say that would make this better?" "Nothing," I said. "There are no words that fix this. But I need you to understand something, David. I love you. You're my son, and that love doesn't just disappear. But love and trust are different things. You destroyed my trust. And without trust, love is it's just biology. It's just genetics. It's not enough to build a relationship on. So you're giving up on me." His voice broke. "No," I said. "I'm letting you face the consequences of your choices. You're going to prison. You're going to lose your business, your license, possibly your marriage. And you need to sit with that. You need to understand what you did and why it was wrong. Not because I tell you, because you figure it out yourself." "And after," he asked, "after I serve my time, will you be there?" I was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," I admitted. "I don't know who I'll be after all this. I don't know who you'll be. But I promise you this, I won't lie to you. If I can forgive you eventually, I'll tell you. If I can't, I'll tell you that too. You're going to get honesty from me, David, because that's what we should have had all along." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I love you, Mom." "I know," I said. "That's what makes this so hard." I hung up the phone and walked away. I didn't look back. The trial came 4 months later. Jack pleaded guilty to insurance fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. David pleaded guilty to accessory to fraud and falsifying documents. He received 8 years. Dr. Cooper lost his medical license and paid a substantial fine. Marcus Webb's body was exhumed, properly identified, and given a real funeral. I attended and paid for it. He deserved better than to be used as a prop in someone else's escape plan. Morrison Construction was liquidated to pay restitution. The life insurance company got their $2 million back. I kept what remained, about $800,000 after legal fees and settlements. It was less money, but it was mine. Honestly mine. Sarah Chen and I met for coffee once, months after everything settled. We weren't friends, we'd never be friends, but we shared something nobody else could understand. We'd both loved the same man, and he'd been equally dishonest with both of us. Emma's in therapy, Sarah told me, learning to process that Jack lied to her about everything. She's angry, confused, but she's resilient. Kids are, I agreed. They're tougher than we give them credit for. Are you doing okay? Sarah asked. I mean really okay. I thought about that. Was I okay? I'd lost my husband twice, once to a fake death, once to the truth. I'd lost my son to prison. I'd lost the life I thought I had, the identity I thought I was, the future I thought I was building toward. But I'd gained something too: clarity, honesty, self-respect. I'm getting there, they said. Every day I'm getting a little closer to okay. I sold the house, our house, Jack's and mine. Too many memories, too many ghosts. I bought a small condo downtown with a view of the river. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, 1 life. Mine alone. I went back to work substitute teaching at the elementary school where I'd spent my career. The kids didn't know my story. To them, I was just Mrs. Morrison, the nice teacher who helped with reading and always had stickers in her desk. I started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping domestic abuse survivors navigate divorce and separation. I understood now what it meant to have your reality torn apart by someone you trusted. I could help them rebuild. I joined a book club, not the one I'd belonged to when Jack was alive, but a new one with new people who knew me as Grace, not as poor widow Grace or betrayed wife Grace. Just Grace. On what would have been our 39th anniversary, I went to Multnomah Falls, where Jack had proposed 40 years ago, where I'd scattered ashes I thought were his. I stood there for a long time watching the water cascade down the cliff. And then I let it go. All of it. The anger, the betrayal, the what-ifs and the if-onlys. I let it wash away with the water. Jack had taken 38 years of my life. He didn't get one more minute. I'm sitting in my favorite coffee shop reading a novel I picked because I wanted to, not because book club assigned it. It's a Tuesday morning, late spring, and the sun is warm through the windows. My phone buzzes. A text from David. He's allowed limited communication now, and he writes once a month. Usually just a few lines: I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm sorry. Today's message is longer. Mom, I'm in a program here, learning about accountability, making amends. My counselor suggested I write you a letter, not an explanation or an excuse, just the truth about what I did and why. Would you read it if I sent it? I think about it for a long time. Then I type, yes, send it. But David, I can't promise forgiveness. I can only promise I'll read it with an open mind. His response comes quickly. That's more than I deserve. Thank you. I set the phone down and go back to my book. Outside, the city moves around me, people rushing to work, to appointments, to lives I know nothing about. Everyone carrying their own stories, their own betrayals, their own survival. I'm 63 now, older than I was when this started. Grayer, more wrinkled. But stronger too. Clearer, more myself than I've been in decades. People sometimes ask if I regret pressing charges, if I regret destroying my family, my son's future, my husband's freedom. I tell them no, because I didn't destroy anything. Jack and David destroyed it when they chose lies. I just refuse to keep building on a rotten foundation. I tell them that dignity isn't negotiable, that self-respect can't be purchased with life insurance money or protected with comfortable lies, that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is refuse to be lied to anymore. I tell them that at 63, I'm finally learning who I am when I'm not being who someone else needs me to be. And that person, she's someone I'm proud to be. I finish my coffee, mark my place in the book, and stand to leave. There's a pottery class at the community center I want to try. A painting workshop next month. A solo trip to the coast I'm planning for myself. My life is smaller now in some ways, quieter, less populated. But it's mine. Completely, honestly, beautifully mine. And that I've learned is worth more than 38 years of comfortable lies. It's worth everything.